Hello everyone. Welcome. It is Friday. We are here. Hopefully. Hopefully we're live. Hopefully YouTube is letting this happen today. Hopefully all you out there watching are doing well. Happy Friday. Any fun plans? Anything interesting going on this weekend or this past week? I would love to hear about it. Any follow-up things from other previous live streams? It's also great to hear about. And we love the early crew, everyone here early. Hello, DJ Basehawk. Hello, Lexi. Hello, Phil's Violet. Hello, Kaseto Kaiba. Hello, Lyric. Hello, Lauren. Hello, Rom. Hello. Hello, Vincent. And thank you to Vincent for the pre-stream super chat. It was very generous. Thank you. And that was very appreciated. Bendita says thank you. Hello, a unicorn, Sparkles. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Dale. Hello, everyone. Hello, Badger. Hello, Andrew. Hello, Stella. Hello, Thomas. Once again from Plant City, Florida. We love it. Plant City, Florida. Hello, Hellhound. Hello, everyone. Okay, so. Finally, my sleep schedule is screwed again, and I can watch the live stream again at 3 a.m. Well, hopefully, I can be your companion while you try to go back to sleep. I don't know, but yeah. So today, don't have anything real specific on my mind to talk about, but I did want to let you all know, just going over the basics of what these live streams normally like. I do put some ideas in the title. And because it is Pride Month, obviously, lots of topics around asexuality, orientation, demon, the demon sexuality. No, demisexuality that has been coming up recently. I thought we could talk more about that, and also just dating and relationships, all the usual stuff, and how all of that intersects with kink. Because I know there's always new people watching the channel, but I'm always like sort of surprised a little bit when I get a comment that's like, oh yeah, this is reminding me we need to keep having this conversation in terms of like the kink and sex, or asexuality and kink, in terms of like, oh, how can you be ace if you're kinky, or I didn't know you were ace because you were kinky, or I thought kink was all about sex, so like if it's not that, what is it? And I thought that could be interesting to go into again, because I've talked about all of that before in various other videos, but it is a pretty common question, especially if you are like also thinking like, what about demisexuality, and what if I need a bond first, and like what does that even mean, and what about kink, and what about doing kink with people you aren't attracted to, and dating and romance and all of that fun stuff. So lots of good topics to cover here, but we do basically have a big old interactive Q&A, and we really go over whatever y'all want to talk about. We usually get into some really good deep conversations, and we also get feedback from other members of the chat as well with their ideas, which is also one of the amazing features of this. Is it's not just like a one-way conversation, like it's very much a group dynamic, I feel like, and I like doing that. And we just go over whatever it is you all want to talk about, and that could be kink stuff, BDSM, polyamory, dating, relationship advice, life stuff, whatever it is. It really could be anything. There are a few things that I won't generally talk about just because I feel like I'm not knowledgeable enough to do that. So things related to like mental health or physical health. Like if you have medical questions about BDSM, like I did a scene 2 weeks ago and I still have this bruise. Is that normal? I can't help you with that. That's not my field. And generally speaking, if you do have a medical question, I'm just going to tell you to like go see a doctor or talk to a doctor, because that's not my forte, not my wheelhouse. But besides that, we kind of go over whatever y'all want to talk about. We do answer questions in the order they come in during the live stream. So being here early, asking questions early is the best way to make sure that you are going to get your question covered. I do sometimes like bop around a little bit if we're sort of having a conversation that's following a theme, but for the most part we do go in the order they come in. And then on top of that, if you do a super chat, which we got one earlier from Vincent, that you basically get bumped to the top of the line. If you have a super chat, it'll show up, it looks really pretty, it's cute, and it'll read out typically the chat as well, and then we'll talk about that one basically as soon as I'm done with whatever thought I'm currently on about, which can take a little bit because I like to ramble. I like to give complete answers. Like, that's the generous way of saying it, is I like to give very complete answers. I know, because this isn't like a real back and forth where you get to say, oh, I think this, or I know this already. Like, I don't know, for the most part, most of you, I don't know anything about your kink history or experience or background or anything, so I have to kind of make the assumption that you don't really know any of that and then go from there. Also, Bandita, very cute, already in her bed today. She's very snuggled. It was supposed to be pretty warm today, but for the last couple hours, it's been pretty cool, and I was not expecting that. So maybe let's get into answering some questions, and we'll see where that takes us. I also need to make sure that people know we're streaming on Twitter, so maybe I'll do that first, because I'm trying to be better about that. I am currently posting to Twitter to let people know that we are live, because YouTube is not always very good about letting people know that we're live, and I gotta do that on YouTube's behalf. YouTube has been very weird lately. Ever since Susan Wojcicki left the company, and whoever that new guy is, I feel like everything's been breaking. Like, I was trying to listen to YouTube on my phone the other day, and I have YouTube Premium, so you can do the like overlay thing where like you toggle away from the app and you go to like email or whatever. It'll keep playing the video in the background and like a smaller kind of screen in the corner, which is really cool. But whenever I would do, like, it kept pausing the video, and I thought it was my headphones like pausing it, and I was like, okay, I gotta disconnect my headphones. And it didn't matter what I did, I've had headphones in or didn't, or had the phone on the charger, like whatever it was. It just like the YouTube app kept pausing the video like every 2 seconds. It was really annoying. So I don't know what was going on with YouTube. I think they mostly fixed it, but I feel like every week there's some sort of new like weird thing happening with YouTube. And I don't know when they're gonna get it all figured out. But it's been a little bit of a rough ride. Okay, we are posted to matter. Oh, played myself for a second there. Okay, we are posted to Twitter. We are good to go. Yeah, YouTube's been a little funky lately, but hopefully they're fixing it. I don't know though, honestly. Oh, and then one other thing I want to mention, because I didn't say this already, this is an 18 plus only stream, so if you're not at least 18, please don't be here. That is for everyone's safety, your safety, my safety, everyone's safety. Just mixing minors and adults and talking about kink and dating and everything, not really a good idea generally, so we don't do that. But as soon as you turn 18, feel free to come back and participate. We usually have like 1 or 2 people every year that come through and are like, I'm finally 18, I can be here, and it's like, welcome to the stream. So just keep that in mind, and then please don't spam the chat. So please do not like ask the same question like 20 times in a row, because if you do that, I'm just not gonna answer it. I'm gonna skip over it. Oh, the dog moved. Okay, where'd she go? Oh, she's way over there now. She's like, no more bed. There we go. There she is. Little toe beans. Yeah, YouTube pausing was happening to me too, but the latest update fixed it on my Android. Yeah, I need to I think mine just automatically updated when I charged my phone last, so I think it's solved now, but yeah, it was really annoying. Okay, all right, let's get into some questions, which I said earlier. Da, 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 da. Busy day at work, but my new sleep schedule has really helped mitigate the exhaustion. Well, that is good. How am I doing tonight? I'm doing pretty good. I was like a little bit tired before starting the stream. I was editing a video and I was just like having trouble keeping my eyes open for some reason. But I feel better now. and I am currently stripping my laundry, which is like a fun new task for me. And I was like, ooh, I have some like white towels and like white sheets and stuff. I'm like, oh, I can like deep clean these. Let's figure it out, see if that works. Cause I know like, I don't know about laundry stripping. It's basically when you like deep soak your laundry before like fully taking it through a wash cycle. And I have front loading washer and dryer, like a washer dryer pair, and so I can't like do that in the machine. I had to like put everything in my tub and like shove it in there, and we'll see if it works. It's nice to have refreshed bedding. I don't like put fabric softener or like dryer sheets or anything in my clothes. Like I'm very plain Jane with everything. It's basically just like bleach if I need that, and then regular scent free, gentle, all natural as much as that can be a thing with laundry products, and keep it real simple. So it's not too much buildup on it, but just see if it gets some things out of there. Mostly makeup, to be honest, because I get a lot of eyeliner on things. It's very hard to remove eyeliner and liquid lipstick from certain fabric, apparently. But that's what I'm doing. That's my big excitement, is editing videos and doing that. Actually, I will bring this up really quickly. I am doing two videos actually for Patreon this month that I think will be really, hopefully, entertaining for people. I'm going to be doing one on blackmail kink, and then one on kidnapping and break-ins. And I originally wanted them to all be one video together, and then I started writing, and then suddenly it was 8 pages, and it was 10, and then it was 15, and I was like, I gotta break this up into parts. So I ended up doing 2 videos instead. I'm gonna be filming those probably tomorrow, which is why I bring it up now. At least one of them. It's really long, so I think I might only film one tomorrow, because that'll probably be like a full day of just like getting everything ready and set up and then doing it. So we'll see how that ends up working, but that'll be this month for content. It should be interesting, and it's not something I really talk about on YouTube, because I feel like it's like, I don't even know, especially these days, like maybe like 5 years ago I could have done it and like maybe been okay, but I feel like even just the title of those videos alone, YouTube would be like, delete this, get rid of it, channel strike, you are teaching people how to do illegal things, like you can't, that's bad, like channel strike. Even like there would not be any nuance in the evaluation for that, so we'll see. Yeah. The sleep schedule is a revelation. I always had the desire to stay up to either get more done or spend more time with the mister, but it was really taking a toll on my health. I was getting too hooked on energy drinks. The man of the house put his foot down. I think that's a good idea. Like, I don't drink caffeine or anything, so I don't have that problem specifically, but yeah, it's always really tempting to stay up and be like, all right, you gotta stay up, you gotta do this. And it's, especially if you're like me and you make your own schedule, it's like, I can just stay up until when I am doing this. Like, it's fine. But I'm doing, there's an app that got advertised to me on Instagram, which normally I wouldn't. There's very few things that's an advertisement on social media that I try out, but I got an app that's called Motion, and it's mostly a desktop thing. I think there's a mobile version you can use, but I haven't really checked that out too much. And it's basically like an AI calendar schedule thing where you tell it what work hours you want to have, and then what your daily schedule is, and then what task you need to get done, and like when during the week you need to get it done by, and like deadlines and things. And then it basically just like generates a schedule for you based off of that, and then like when you want to start working, how many breaks you want to have, how long your breaks are. And I think that'll be interesting to see how that works out for me, because it's like very hard for me to like there's just so many things I need to get done, and sort of like work stuff and errands and house stuff kind of ends up blurring together into like I'm doing 4 different things all at once, and it's hard to make sure everything gets done at the same time. But yeah, I've had to enforce some rules around sleep for my partner. Sleep is an important factor in your mental health and overall health. It really is. Like, it's so easy to let sleep fall by the wayside, because it's easy, like you want to stay up, you want to watch this, you want to spend more time with people, you just like, there's so much to enjoy in life, you want to stay up later. But then like if you're only ever getting 6 or 7 hours of sleep at a time, like that eventually builds up, and like you might be a person that can totally function on 7 hours, or you might need 8 or 9. Like, everyone has their own individual sleep rhythm, and like if you notice you're not performing at your best, you might want to reevaluate that. And it's like one of the amazing things I really like about kink is that like it does give you this framework within Power Exchange to help you make those healthier life choices in terms of like your day-to-day schedule or eating habits or sleeping habits, right? Like it's like very hard if you're solo by yourself and you find being on your phone like at night in bed really rewarding. Like you want to browse, you want to play games, you want to go on Twitter, you want to browse Instagram or TikTok before you go to sleep. It's so easy to get sucked into that and just be like, all right, I'm going to do this one thing. And suddenly it's an hour and a half later, you're still in bed, you're not asleep yet, and that can totally mess up your whole cycle. So having somebody basically to be like your like accountability buddy, but also like they're your dom at the same time to be like, all right, we're putting. Oh, it's my. I think my microphone might be a little bit loud. Let me turn it down a bit. To be like, all right, put the phone away. No phone at night. We're gonna get you an old-fashioned alarm clock. Here's your schedule for the morning. Here's when you go to bed an hour before. No TV, no phone. You can listen to the radio. You can play music. You can't nothing with a screen and just there's like I'm sure tips out there for like a sleep hygiene or whatever it is they call it, and that can be a good way to get some better ideas for sleep. But it's I think my sleep schedule over the last like couple months has gotten a lot better. Like even the last like 6 months, really, I'd say I've been moving it slowly more backward, so that way I'm going to bed earlier. But it is really difficult sometimes to like not stay up, especially when you live with people who stay up really late and also wake up late. And like it's hard to be the person who bucks that trend and like goes to bed the earliest, but sometimes you gotta. Yeah, it's really made a world of difference having to rely on chugging energy drinks all day. That was never going to be sustainable, so I'm glad we nipped it in the bud. Yeah, I mean, I would do that for myself as a treat when I worked in college and I had a job that had weird hours compared to my school schedule, but I wouldn't want to have to do that every day. That would just, like, that can't be, like, I know that there's not like necessarily evidence that says this is like the worst thing for your body ever. But I feel like it can't be good to do that every day. And like if it doesn't make you personally feel good and you want to change it, I feel like that should just be enough on its own. Oh, I'm on an Amtrak train with no Wi-Fi in northern Montana. It doesn't have, yeah, northern Montana not known for the cell reception. I think basically up there you have to be on a U.S. cellular or there's like one other provider I think that's up. I have family sort of around that area, so I'm familiar with the North Montana dead zone situation being up in the mountains around there. So, no worries. Oh my god. Some idiot gets to be kicked off for being too drunk and opening a door. Oh my god. I've been on trains so much and I've never heard of that happening before. It's definitely good you have a private room though because yeah, it's not fun. Yeah. Hmm. My husband will be fine as like I don't feed him after midnight. Yeah. Gotta take care of the husband, make sure he's okay. Has all his needs met. Mm-hmm. I had ice cream for the first time in over a year the other day. It was so satisfying. Yeah, I bet. Especially if you haven't had it for a long time. Ooh, recently started doing hypnotic and neuroscience based slave training. It's been intense but fun. That is very interesting because I know people do both of those. I haven't really heard those be combined before. If you have any insight from that you want to share, I would love to hear it because that sounds very interesting. How does that work? Because I mean, that's like what most people like in real life. Not like well, kink is also real life. But you know what I mean, right? Like in vanilla life, a lot of people will use hypnosis for breaking bad habits, like smoking or nail biting or things. I think that's like the main like it's not just like I'm gonna hypnotize you and you're gonna levitate. Like most people don't do that. It tends to be more like you have a bad habit you want to fix. So I'm glad that's working out for you. Plant City is the winter strawberry capital of the USA. Well, thank you for the strawberries in the winter time. I guess I hadn't really thought about where the winter strawberries come from. I just assume all of it's imported from somewhere else, which Florida, that's pretty far away. Mm-hmm. I'm demon sexual because I'm a hellhound and I don't develop sexual attraction until I bond with them. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yep, definitely Cerberus vibes for sure. Okay, let me see here. She is very cute, my little Bendita. Okay, if you start seeing someone, how early should you let your date know you like whips and chains? First date material or first month topic? So, everyone I know has like a different approach to this. I personally, I'm totally out there. So the main way I meet people is online dating apps. And I put it out there like in my first paragraph, depending on the format of the app I'm using. I'll put it out there like, I'm kinky. It's a big part of my life. If you're not going to be okay with that, we're not going to be compatible. I don't get into specifics about what I do. I just let people know that, like, kink is a big part of my life. I know about it. And I also say, like, you don't have to be kinky yourself. It's not a requirement to be in a relationship with me. But you'd have to be okay with me doing it to be able to have a relationship with me. So letting people know they don't have to be kinky. Like, I'm not trying to coerce anyone into, like, lying about being kinky to be able to date me because that would be ridiculous. But I'm trying to be open and honest. So for me, it's always worth it because it's my job, right? So it's a very unavoidable part of who I am. Like I can't put this in a container and be like, yeah, I work in accounting. Yeah, totally. I have a very normal job. I go to an office, absolutely. So for me, like I kind of have to be very upfront because it is oftentimes the first question that comes up on a date is something like, oh, what do you do for a living? And it's like, well, here you go. So I tell people right away. And then when it comes to getting into the particulars of what I enjoy, I guess it depends on what the intention of the relationship is. Like, if it's more of a romantic dating scenario and I don't really know how kinky the other person is, the specifics will come up kind of more gradually over time. But if I'm with somebody or going on a date with somebody that I know is also kinky themselves and they talked about that in their bio, then the conversation comes up much more quickly than it would otherwise. But if you're not choosing for whatever reason to be openly kinky on whatever dating app, which makes sense because I think sometimes people make assumptions about that, or it's like I'm sure even on places like Tinder probably there are people that get in trouble for like being openly kinky in a very direct way because it gets the like flagged as being like sex work for some reason. I don't know why. That seems to happen. And I try to bring it up as early as possible, proportionate to how important this is to you in your life. If especially if you're somebody where you were in a really long-term relationship and it was vanilla and it was great at first but you ended up getting really bored and you don't want to have that happen again, you need to have kink in your life, you know that vanilla doesn't work for you and you have to have kink somewhere, then I would bring it up as soon as possible because you don't want to waste your time, anyone else's time. Hopefully, like if you just like dating, like if you like going on dates and going on first dates and you like meeting new people and you're not necessarily invested in having this be like the person, okay, maybe don't bring it up right away. But I think for most people that are very focused on dating as like I want to find a partner to maybe not spend my whole life with, but to like, have a long-term thing of some variety or at least be compatible enough to potentially be able to do that. I think bringing it up early is always important. I would, if it's a sex thing for you or really important for your relationships in that way, I would definitely bring it up like before anything ends up getting steamy in the bedroom. Like I wouldn't want that to be a surprise to somebody later because you have to think about this from the perspective of not only somebody that's going to be receptive to it, but also somebody that's very much not going to be. And so in the best case scenario, you have somebody who's also extremely kinky that's like, oh my god, yes, I'm scared to talk about this in my profile because I've had like these negative interactions or people make assumptions or whatever. I'm so glad that you're into it too. I also am really into it. What are you into? Like what kind of kinks do you have? And then having that conversation. If you wait too long, you're missing out on maybe fun time you could have been having and scenes you could have been doing instead. And if it's somebody who's not into kink and is very against it, they are likely going to feel very negatively about that. They are going to feel tricked or trapped in some way. They're just not going to have generally a very positive feeling about it. They're gonna be like, why did you wait to tell me? This is so important. How could you hide this from me? Like it's you may not intend for it to be, but if you come in knowing you're kinky and you don't share that, a lot of people who are not kinky are going to perceive that as being intentionally deceptive in a manipulative way. Like you're almost trying to trick them into being okay with kink because it's so important to you. And I just think that's like, you don't want to deal with that. So earlier is almost always better. I think what's more important is not the timing of it, but how you have that conversation. I think a lot of people get hung up over like when the right time to bring it up is. But you can bring it up at like the perfect time and say it in a terrible way where it goes really badly. And you can bring it up maybe when it's a little bit less opportune. But if you can definitely navigate that conversation, then it doesn't really matter so much. Like, I think you can definitely come on too strong. I think what people tend to mistake is like, oh, the timing was wrong. Really tends to be you weren't that good at the conversation. Like, yeah, if it's like, you match on a dating app and you go, hey, how's your day going? And then, you have a little bit of a back and forth for like 20 seconds. And like the third message you send is like, so anyways, I'm really into CBT and foot worship, and will you be my mommy? Like, if the response to that is, and then getting unmatched, the problem with that wasn't that you talked about it too early. It was the way that you did it. So there's a way to bring that up similarly early. Maybe you have a little, how are you? How's your day going? And then you say, oh, by the way, I wanted to make sure that you knew this is on my profile, but I am kinky. That is really important to my relationships. How do you feel about that? Like, don't necessarily get really specifics about don't get too specific about your exact kink or like, please be my mommy or anything like that. Like, don't get too forceful, but just have that open dialogue to start with in terms of like, this is what I want. This is where I want this to go. If you're not on board with that, or you don't know what this is, like, we gotta have this conversation like pretty soon. As far as bringing it up like during a date, like not remotely beforehand, I think you have to be a little bit more careful about this, especially as like a dominant person or a man that dates women. You have to be very careful because like the context of how you bring it up can be perceived very differently depending on how you go about it. Like, if you are on a first date and you sit down and you have like a natural conversation, and then maybe they ask about your hobbies, maybe there's a way to segue into that feels pretty natural. But I don't think you ever want to even come across like you were trying to pressure somebody into like saying they're kinky or doing kinky things. And I think the way to do that is to bring it up in a way that, in a setting that's like very casual, right? Like talking about it on a walk or when you're getting coffee outside. If it's at the point where you're like walking them home to the door and then you're like leaning in the doorway and then you're like, so by the way, I'm also really into bondage. Do you like that? Maybe not the opportune time to do that. Maybe not the right setting for that, because that can feel very intimidating and trapping and make it seem like you're pushing for something because of how the conversation progressed and like when it got brought up. So be careful about that. I just think bringing it up not in specifics like, what can you do for me? Like, will you be my daddy? Can you be my mommy? Like, don't do stuff like that. Keep it very open. It's just like you're talking about yourself. And also, this is key, and I think people underestimate this. Vulnerability is very key for building, especially new relationships, and really any relationship, but especially if you're trying to get a sense of like, am I into this person? Do they like me? Do we vibe? Do we gel? Are we going to be able to make something work long term? Being able to open up with that vulnerability first and being able to say, yeah, I'm kinky. This is what I'm into. I had this other girlfriend where we did some stuff, like whatever your history is, whatever it looks like, share that. That, I think, when done well, comes across like, okay, you're being open, you're being vulnerable, and hopefully the other person will recognize that and kind of reflect that back a little bit, where they might respond, let's look at like maybe A, B scenarios here. Like, if like A version, the terrible version, right? You're on a first date and you've been talking for all of like 20 seconds. You've already bought her a drink she didn't ask for, and you start launching into how you're really looking for an adult nursing relationship and how it's your favorite fetish and how you spend every day watching adult nursing relationship porn and how it's just your favorite kink ever, and that, she looks like she has big mommy milkers and you really find that attractive in a woman. That is like the worst way you could do that. That's no, stop. Do not do that. The best thing you can hope for in that scenario is that she excuses herself to the bathroom, leaves out the window, and then never talks to you again. Worst case scenario is she throws a drink in your face, goes outside, calls the police, and it ends up being a whole deal. So that's a little bit hyperbolic, maybe, but that's very bad. Don't do that. But if you wanted to bring this up in a way that I think is more productive long term and is going to help you communicate what you're actually feeling, not seem too desperate. And I think a lot of this is like, one, it overwhelms people with information if you get very specific. And if they don't know anything about kink, they're going to be like, what are these words? What are these terms? They're going to think about dungeons and red rooms and 50 Shades of Grey and gimp suits, and it's going to be a whole thing. So you're going to have to if you're just flooding a vanilla person with information, it's going to be very difficult to navigate if you're not careful. Yeah. Any non-awkward kink intro discussion should not start with, I want mommy, I want milk. It's true. Listen, if you want that, if you just want milk, go to a lactation bar in Japan, okay? Just like there's ways to get this problem solved that don't involve harassing random women on dating apps. But I think the more positive way to do this is like you just have a natural flow in a conversation. And keep in mind, I've been polyamorous for like 7 years now, something like that. And so I'm very used to dating where like sex and compatibility around sex is like it's not a taboo subject. It's not taboo at all. It's just not taboo because you have to talk about it because you're poly and you probably are dating other people, and those other people and you have different standards around like STI testing and timing of sex, and like, are you looking for sex? Are you sexually satisfied in your other relationships? Like, are you just looking for friends to play video games with because your partners work 80-hour weeks? Like, you have to be very open about that. And so because of that, I'm very used to like dating people where it's not uncomfortable to have those conversations because it's kind of expected to happen probably within like the first, if not the first or second date, or like text messages between those times, probably by like the third or fourth date you're starting that conversation. But and like later than that happens too, but like the point is that like it's not like you don't wait until you're in the bedroom clothes off to suddenly be like, all right, here's the handcuffs. Don't, like there's you gotta find a happy medium between first thing that you say and immediately before you get your penis out. Like you gotta happy medium, I think, is usually like you maybe vibe really well on a first date. I don't typically like explicitly talk about like sex or kink or anything on a first date, like during it, because I don't want to give people the impression that I'm on the date to get to a hookup. And I say this in my profile, but I also like let people know when typically if we're setting up like a sit down dinner date, not like a casual coffee date or like a hike or something, I will say, hey, just so you know, like I'm this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm looking for, and just to make sure we're on the same page about what we're both looking for. And then if that works out, then typically sometime between like either the first and second date or between the second and like fourth date, somewhere around there, I will bring up over text message like, hey, I want to check in about this, like can we have this conversation? And we'll have that conversation about compatibility in that general arena. And I feel like that's pretty much always worked for me. I think talking about it in person on like during a date, I feel like what tends to happen more in my experience like during in-person dates when you're like out in public is maybe sort of bringing up like how you were raised or like kind of like your life story and like like when did you start dating or how long have you been poly. And I think especially if you're dating like polyamorous or you're dating somebody is kinky, like it's a more natural question to be like, oh, like when did you discover this? Because most people's experiences, at least in my experience dating like primarily like dominant cis het men, like most people like answers related to questions around like, when did you figure out you were kinky? How long have you been poly? Sex is almost always part of that equation. So yeah, it gets complicated to time it. But I think really having the conversation at all is so much more important than trying to time it perfectly. So like if you can just work up the courage to have that conversation earlier rather than later, I think you're pretty much going to be golden. Just don't like make it too personal. Don't seem too desperate. Just have it be an open conversation where it's like not revealing some deep dark secret about you, but a place for open mutual dialogue around like expressing curiosity around that and wondering what their ideas or experiences are, right? Like if you're just blabbering on about yourself, it doesn't generally leave a good impression. Whereas if you ask questions that are something like, like I got into poly originally because I was part of the kink community and I met people that were poly and they seemed like they had a great time. I didn't realize that it was an option and I decided to look into it more. Then after that, after reading some books and talking more about it with other people, I decided that polyamory made sense for me as a relationship style. And then you turn it into like, and speaking of that, like, do you have any experience with kink? And then you can like go back and forth based on that. And I think that just gives a lot of more open space and like, again, I think it just leaves overall a better impression. Yeah, as an added bonus of being poly, it's less pressure to fulfill a partner's kink needs if there's an incompatibility. Yeah, like you don't have to be all of everything to one person. Like I've had partners over the years where we were like, we matched here but not here, and in monogamy like that wouldn't work. And so having poly where like okay, like you're into this but I'm into this, but I know you have a partner that does that, so like you're satisfied there, that's good. Especially when it is something that is like really important to somebody's relationship or like their happiness. If you can't provide that, it's very difficult to have a happy, healthy, long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that makes sense. That's sort of like a longer answer than I expected I would turn that into, but I hope that made some sense. So let me know if you have any follow-up thoughts or questions about that. And I'm sure we'll talk about that one more because talking about kink and dating is like it's a whole minefield. What's going on in the demi community? Is there something? Is there like drama happening in the demisexuality community? If so, I don't know what it is, but I would love to know because I try to keep up to date on all of that, and I feel like I haven't heard anything. I feel like what I know about it is the demisexuals are just like keeping to themselves. I don't know. Hmm. I'm almost 50 years old and still use the terminology S&M. Is this wrong? I I don't think it's wrong. I think most people would understand, well, pretty much everyone will understand what you mean by that. We use BDSM instead because it's a much more comprehensive acronym or abbreviation, and so it makes more sense to call it that because it involves more of the things that are included in the set of activities that kinky people do. S&M was really popular, and it still is popular in like medical literature and in psychological research. It's like if you're using it in a personal relationship, I think that's totally fine. I think if you, especially if you're not into like bondage or discipline or power exchange, if you're just into sadomasochism, S&M makes great sense. But if you're doing any of the other parts of the acronym, besides just S&M, I feel like it is more accurate to call it something else. And like also it depends on your age range, right? Like if you're 50 and you're dating other 50-year-olds, S&M was like the common terminology for everyone to use in like the 90s. Like that was like everyone called it S&M. And in fact, one of the seminal works on all of this, Jay Wiseman's SM 101, because also there's S&M, there's SM, like, whether or not you put the ampersand in there or whatever, like, also there's differences with that too. I would say SM is more used than S&M. S&M, I feel like that is like, I pretty much only ever see that in like medical literature and like research. I think SM is much more common like within the kink community. Don't know why there is that very slight distinction, but for some reason there is. So yeah, it's like technically wrong, but I don't think it's wrong enough to worry about. The one reason I would really encourage you to maybe change your language is if you are researching stuff, or you're trying to find events or meetup groups or anything like that, you're probably gonna have more luck using BDSM or kink over S&M, because like there's just not as many groups or things called that. And I feel like S&M probably, there's probably, if I Google S&M right now, what is it, what actually pops up? I'm kind of curious. I get the Rihanna song, of course. I get a dictionary definition. I get a bike dealership. Rihanna lyrics. Rihanna. I get a, let's see, a encyclopedia entry. Another different bike. Another. I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't want to click on that. And then a TV special on IMDb. A different. It must be a type of BMX bike. I'm getting a lot of bikes actually. And then SM Entertainment, so got some K-pop stuff in there. So it just goes to show. And maybe if you Googled this, Google would serve you different things, because I know it's kind of like calibrated based off of like who Google thinks you are as a person. But like you can see from that, like it's not really giving you exactly what you might actually be looking for. It's a bunch of different stuff. And like BDSM pretty much like is only BDSM. Like I think if I just looked it up, does anything else pop up besides like what you think it would be? There's just a bunch, there's like dictionary stuff, there's articles, a Time magazine article that says how BDSM can save your relationship. I actually kind of want to look at that. Tell me more. There's some links to like, oh, there's a beginner guide to BDSM with tips from sex therapists. There's some like Psychology Today. There's an AP article on like how to work with kinky clients. Like it's pretty much all what you would expect to see. And then like you get about 20 results down, and then suddenly it becomes a bunch of porn websites. So yeah. And then you get, and it's funny because now it's like bobbing back and forth between like actual stuff and like porn websites. So there you go. All right, that was a fun little adventure there. Hopefully that answered your question. So yeah, you definitely can use that, but it's not the most common by far. For dating, if being a lifestyler is a must for me, should I filter out people who aren't kinky, or should I attempt to get them in the scene? It depends on how much work you're willing to do and how much potentially fruitless time you are willing to waste. So I definitely know people, and this is more me, so I'm like, to be clear about this is more me. I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time introducing kink to somebody who doesn't really know yet if they're kinky or not, because I am primarily submissive. I don't like, it's usually awkward, especially for newer doms, to feel like the more experienced submissive is leading the interaction. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's fine to do, but I know a lot of people are like uncomfortable with that. Like they feel like, well, you could never, and I've heard this basically verbatim before. I don't know how you could respect me because you're so experienced and I'm like this newbie dom, so like why would you ever want to play with me anyways? And like people kind of psych themselves out, and so I find it's like just very difficult to be like that first time submissive to a brand new dom, and like it just doesn't really work typically to introduce people. What does kind of work is if somebody knows they're kinky already, but they haven't had a chance to explore it, and they are open to having a more experienced person have an opinion about what they're doing and getting that feedback, which that can be uncomfortable. It's not always fun, but if they can be open to that, it can be worth it. If you are a dominant or a top and you are looking for somebody who's submissive, I think that's generally a lot easier to introduce to people who haven't ever tried it before. I have the approach of sort of like a process of elimination. I feel like it's always better. Did I say illumination? I meant to say elimination. I don't know. I don't know if I actually said that wrong or not, but elimination. I feel like it's much easier to go with people you already know are kinky, find out if you're compatible with them, and then if you just don't end up finding anyone locally to you that really meshes with you, then you get more into like finding people that are like openly okay with kink, and then just like being very open about it again on your dating profile, on the apps, just so people know what to expect, even if they're not necessarily like fully in the BDSM community themselves. And if you are introducing people to kink, there is just like, I get overwhelmed thinking about it because it's like, I feel like it's so important to be like a good first impression of BDSM to other people, like in terms of consent and communication practices and all of that stuff. And if you can't really like be in that role of being that like benevolent teacher, like you have to be just like so careful about like not pressuring people and not making it seem like an ultimatum. And like it's so difficult because like in vanilla culture, like in just regular like vanilla dating, like people are very willing to compromise and skirt around things for the sake of harmony and for the sake of being with somebody that they really want to be into. And there's an analogy that gets used in a book that I read recently that's about baseball. And at the beginning of the relationship, this woman finds out that her boyfriend, who's like a new boyfriend, is really into baseball. And she's not like super into it. She's like, sure, I'll try going to baseball. They go to the game together, and she sees him having a lot of fun watching baseball. And she, like, she likes the hot dog. She likes spending time outdoors. Like, she gets other things out of it, but she never really gets into baseball. And eventually they date for a couple years, and then he's buying season tickets to go to baseball games, and he's spending all this money to go do baseball things and buy memorabilia, and like they watch baseball all the time at home, and everything ends up becoming baseball, 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 baseball. And it's like, hey, what about her hobbies, right? Like what about my knitting projects or scrapbooking or gardening? Like I don't get to do any of those because we're now spending all of our time and income on your fucking baseball. And the reason why I bring up that story is because, like, initially at the beginning of the relationship, when you have a lower level of commitment and security, it's much easier to temporarily compromise and find enjoyable novelty in the new experience you don't typically get a lot out of for yourself. But when it becomes the default or baked into the relationship that baseball is our thing, that kink is our thing, and then you can't let go of that. It's so much harder for somebody who's like not really kinky to go like, hey, wait, stop, this isn't really actually my thing. I only said yes because I wanted to try it out, or I didn't know better yet, or I did it because you were into it and I didn't want to lose you. Like, even if you don't personally yourself make it an ultimatum to be kinky, a lot of people will make it an ultimatum in their own heads that they have to be into certain things or kink at all in order to date you. And that might to some extent be true in reality. Like, yeah, like if you need to have kink in any relationship, it's going to be more difficult for you to not have that pressure present there, and for somebody to not feel that they have to be something they're not. But I think, yeah, you have to be willing to deal with that. You have to really make sure you're encouraging the person to be open and honest and totally honest about what they actually really do like and dislike, and not just saying yes to make you happy because they think that they have to in order to be able to date you. And navigating that's very tricky. And then obviously, like, introducing them to like all of the concepts and safe words and aftercare and drop and taking care of bruises and subspace, and just like, oh, there's like just, again, there's just like so many things. There are so many things that need to be talked about when you're introducing a brand new person to kink, and it's a lot to take on. So yes, it is possible, but it's like it's just so much more work. It's like, for me, it's like the difference between getting an adult dog versus getting a puppy. Like, a puppy is exciting because they get to spend their whole life with you and they bond with you very deeply, and they're very cute and fuzzy, and you get to teach them everything about the world. You get to be totally responsible for all of that introduction, and some people are really into that. But the downside of that is you have to deal with like the potty training and the teething and the destruction and the energy and the barking and the separation anxiety, and like things that in other adult dogs that have already had owners and gone through that phase in their life, like, you don't have to deal with that as much or at all sometimes, depending on what the issue is or the non-issue is, I guess. And I for me, I like adult dogs. I like also relationships where I don't have to put in the very basic legwork of like, this is what BDSM means. But like, I've had relationships where I have done that. But yeah. And like, also, you don't have to always do all of the work. Like, I think for me, what is really the test, like, if I was going to pursue a relationship with somebody who, like, we went out a couple times, we started to talk about it, and they went, well, I don't really know a lot about BDSM, but I think I could be into it. Like, let's try it out. If that was the response, what I would be looking for to really make sure I wanted to pursue that is I would try to look at how they self-start around it, right? Like, are they just relying on me to tell them everything? Are they relying on me to like send them the YouTube videos and the articles and like literally sit down and teach them everything like one-on-one directly? Sometimes multiple times they don't like fully get a concept right away. Or are they only responding when it's, you know, it comes up because you're bringing it up? Or are they actually researching on their own? Are they watching documentaries? Are they reading books? Are they taking notes? Are they trying to explore locally or find events or do anything that shows some level of initial startup on their own end? And I think if they don't have any of that, if you're talking to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, kink sounds like fine, whatever, I guess, and they kind of just like leave it at that and they never show any inclination to actually doing further research or anything else, and you're always having to lead that conversation, is probably not the greatest sign. I really think that, like, I mean, could it work? Potentially. But I think if you're looking for the best shot and like red flags, I feel like it's a much likelier, bigger issue if somebody's not showing any initiative whatsoever. So hopefully that makes sense. So I think that's basically what I want to say. I mean, like, you can take them to like a party or a munch. Totally. But you also can't just be like, hey, let's go to the BDSM club as our first date, you know, like, usually. If they're already kinky, that's different, but yeah. I don't know. Okay, I'm still like feeling really tired for some reason. Oh, it's gonna be great when I go to the gym later. This is gonna be a problem, but we'll get through it. Okay, let's move on to another question. What? Okay, wait. Tell me more about this. I have seen a lot of people fetishizing the MAGA movement. I don't want to kink shame, but seeing that concerns me. Is there a way to address it without kink shaming them? Okay. I'm like fascinated by this. I haven't seen this at all. I believe you it happens. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind this happens. Does this mean is this like porn where like a lady wears a MAGA hat? Like, does this mean somebody who wears like a Trump costume to the dungeon? Like, what does this mean exactly? Because I mean, I think there are people. I mean, people. First of all, our brains are amazing, terrible objects and organisms. Well, not organisms, but like they are terrible, terrible things, and they can come up with ideas that are horrific and wonderful, and we can basically make anything erotic, technically. Um, and I just, yeah, I mean, you don't want to kink shame them, but okay, like, is it like, okay, because there's like role playing it ironically, where you don't really believe that stuff, and you're doing it to be like funny or get catharsis from it. And then I think in that case, it falls into like edge play, where like doing it in public where people don't want to maybe interact with that or see that, even in an ironic way or in a self, like, a, a self-reflective comedic fashion. Like, I don't know. I just feel like maybe having that in public isn't necessarily the best, but if you're doing it privately, I feel like there's not really much to do about that. I'm trying to process this too. What are we talking about exactly? Like, no kink shaming, but I may have a new hard limit. Yeah. Um. Oh. Like, I'm gonna convert the conservative Mr. Man with my naughty kinky behavior. Is that what it is? I think the mega fetishization is along the lines of like the 50s household for the modern day. Oh, so is it like trad wife stuff? Oh, is it? Okay. I can see it, but we do 50s household minus the misogyny. Yeah, huh. I don't know. I mean, I feel like because for some reason people have let the public know that kink shaming is a phrase that is a thing that exists. The term kink shaming gets very widely used for scenarios where it's not actually really kink shaming. Like, I think expressing concern is not kink shaming on its face. Like, especially if they're doing it in public around other people that maybe don't want to participate in that and they're expecting a level of participation from that. Like, yeah, you got to kind of bring it up with them and be like, hey, what's this about? I don't know. That is very, very interesting. Mm. About the MAGA question, I find fanaticism of ideologies that I'm against quite hot. Is like somewhat like the dark side winning and enslaving everything. Same as sports fanaticism. I mean, I think like I could see a scenario where it's like maybe like an interrogation scene or like a kidnapping scene where it's like, oh no, I'm being kidnapped by like a somebody who's like the opposite of me ideologically, or like I'm being captured by like this group that I'm opposed to that wants to like torture me and oh no, it's so bad. Like I could see playing around with that like being an interesting brain experiment, but I think that kind of keeps it in the places like of like not being a value you share, and like it's very obviously not a belief that you hold yourself because of the role you're playing in the scene in relation to them. But if it's more, is the MAGA kink like people who fetishize racism or sexism? I mean, I interpreted it as like literally like fetishizing like Donald Trump supporters and like MAGA people. Like not like the ideal, not like the cornerstones behind MAGA as an idea, but like the people that are into that. But I might be wrong about that. Yeah, have at it on YouTube. Oh, Dominic Noble did a review. Oh wait, shoot, I missed that. Um, yeah, I mean, like, people can have different opinions about a kink. Like, some people are gonna look at one kink and be like, this is disgusting and this is wrong and nobody should be into this, and that's one reaction. But you don't like, you could not support something and not be like, this is gross and wrong and bad, and no one should ever do this under any circumstances. Like, yeah, I get why you would be comfortable with that. I feel like maybe I need an example of like where this is coming from for me to be like, ah, yes, this is the MAGA kink, absolutely. Yeah, S&M is still a correct term, but just that BDSM is probably more common as it is more than just sadism and masochism. Yeah, that's basically what I just said. Mm-hmm. YouTube be like bad channel strike. You trying to teach people about consent? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sadly. Yeah, it depends on how important doing BDSM. This is kind of getting back into like the dating question. It depends on how important doing BDSM is with your significant other. For me, it's a need, not a want. So it's go with first date. Okay, so like it gets talked about on the first date. It's not worth the effort to then find out they hate it. Yeah. And like that's one of the things too, right? Like if you want to introduce kink to somebody, you have to accept the possibility that you could invest a lot of time talking to this person about kink and sharing resources and answering questions and going to events and very delicately planning scenes and doing all of that for like weeks and weeks and weeks or months, and then you do it and then it ends up not being their thing, and then you wasted, well, I don't think you really wasted time because maybe that could be important information for them in the future, but it maybe could have been a better way to spend your own time. Yeah, maybe let's say that. Okay. All right, I'm trying to find, I lost where I was in the chat for a second here. Let me see if I can find where the last question was I was trying to get to. Oh, and by the way, if you want to like the stream, you can do that. No pressure, though. Okay, here we go. Regarding the slave training, so far it has been listening to an audio file every day. Those are very popular, I've heard. Working on helping with overcoming issues with fully letting go of control. Meanwhile, every time I obey, I am told to reward myself and trigger a dopamine connection between obedience and submission. Well, that sounds like very powerful. I hope that goes well. Very interesting. Okay. I usually go with, well, what kinds of things do you like doing in the bedroom, and see where they go with it. May mentioned bondage and see if they cringe or light up. Yeah, I didn't touch on that in my answer. Maybe it's also worth, well, okay, body language is like not really a science, but I think monitoring people's responses for like broad generalities is probably a good thing, so you can kind of investigate those a little bit further. Yeah, definitely having a general conversation about like what you like to do in the bedroom. Which, if your kink is not a bedroom thing, it's a little bit harder to segue into that and be fully honest. But most people do see BDSM as a sex thing ultimately, and so like we'll probably be fine regardless. But yeah, like if you bring up like, again, not like particular exact things you want to do with that person, but bondage or schoolgirl uniforms or whatever, if you see their response and they're like very enthusiastic and nodding along and like very like they're giving you positive feedback that they want to hear more, versus like they're kind of like they're crossing their arms and they're kind of looking around and they're like okay, okay, sure. Like if they're giving you like the okay, sure response, or like looking horrified and confused, like what is this person talking about? Maybe not a good sign. And you can maybe pick up on that, and you can say like, and I think this is, they maybe shouldn't assume what they're thinking automatically, but it's worth bringing up like, hey, it looks like you had a response to that. Like, what's coming up for you? Or like what do you think about that? Like having some kind of way of inviting their thoughts into the conversation, I think is generally a good habit. Do demisexuals find their deminess also extends into kink? Um, like in the sense that you have to have a bond with somebody before you want to do kink play with them, like in that way. I'm trying to think of anyone I know is like kind of like specifically mentioned this. I'm like gonna like, this is bisexual sitting. I think I'm bisexual sitting now. Um, yeah, I think most of the people I know that are demisexual, I mean, most people I know that do kink, regardless of the orientation, kind of do kink two different ways, right? They either only play with romantic and sexual partners and it's very much tied to sex and romance, or they play with people they have some kind of other connection to, like their friends or something else, like maybe not romantic connections or lovers, but they have a connection. And then, well, I guess really the other type is like people that play very casually and do a lot of pickup play, and they don't have a big emotional bond necessarily with the people they play with at all because they're playing with people they don't really know. I would say the majority of people are probably in those first two categories of playing either with monogamous partners or just intimate partners of any kind, and then people who also play with friends, and then underneath that, people who like very regularly do pickup play. I haven't really heard anyone say directly that because they're demisexual, they also need to have a bond before doing kink. But I suspect if they also experienced kink as a very sexual thing, that would probably be true. But there's a lot of people, demi people, ace people, where we like doing kinky stuff and doing BDSM not because it's like a sex thing, but because it's this kind of like other way to get to very deep intimacy and bonding and emotional closeness that doesn't involve genitals or sex. And so it can kind of, I guess in some ways, even when it's non-sexual, for some people it can serve a similar role, but it's not necessarily that. I can only comment as an ace, and it's tied to romance or close connections for me. But sex is a no-no. Toys are good though, and that is more likely a control aspect thing than the sex itself. Ah, yes, I am demisexual, and yes, it does take a factor with who I'm willing to play with. Yeah, have definitely used the word demi kink sexual before. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm demi. It's a yes for me. Yeah, I do not want randos touching me. Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all fair. Thank you for contributing that. Yeah, because I think it's so individual. Like it's very difficult to make any kind of like broad statement about like people that are demi do this and people that aren't demi do this. Like outside of the definition of what the word itself means and like what it means to be demi, the actual application of that I think tends to be very nuanced. And that, I mean, reality is just nuance. That's just what it is. That is just what it is. Who wants to start a conversation with CBT and foot worship? I just sat down. Yeah, exactly. That would be a little wild. How is the steak? What size collar do you want? LOL. Yeah. Yeah. Just like you pull out a measuring tape and you're like, wait, hold on a second. All right, good. Like, what are you doing? That's like a real like Christian Grey type move right there. Honestly, if is there, are collars even like really a thing in 50 Shades? I mean, I think collars happen at some point, but like getting collared or wearing a collar is like not that big of a deal in the books. But even like if it was, like if collars, like the contract is the big deal in the book, right? Not the collar, but having the contract. Like if collars were a big deal, there would have been a scene in 50 Shades that was basically like Christian fucking, I don't know, measuring Anastasia's neck in the middle of the night while she slept, and that just like being romantic for some reason. Oh god. Maybe it's good she did not end up really getting into collars at all. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you just say, like, I'm into bondage or something, that does make it difficult to tell whether or not you're a top or a bottom, but maybe that's okay. Yeah, the big titty goth girlfriend meme is truly my least favorite of all of the memes. Like, shut up. Like, none of you people, like, I find, like, a side rant, I guess, about this for a second, because it does bother me. I feel like what usually ends up being connected to that is somebody, like, they don't, first of all, they don't really know what, like, separates, like, metal, alternative, goth, any of that. They just see women who wears black that has big eyeliner and looks like she's sad. Like, that's all they see. And they think that that will get them sex. And what they really want is, like, a freaky woman in bed. And they think that that is somehow, like, a cheat code to getting a quote-unquote freaky woman in bed. Which is, like, that isn't how that works. It's exhausting, but it is a thing. And it's so tired and silly. And it's like, hey, if you want that, you gotta, like, know about the things in that community and culture and probably also like them too, at least a little bit, if that's actually what you want. Which is very silly. I'm not sure I'd limit aggressive behavior to one gender. I mean, I don't think I did that. I don't know what that was in relation to. If I go with an example where I've gendered people, it's just like I just keep going with the example because I try not to confuse people by like mixing things up at all. But I'm not like, yeah, like we'll just say this to be very clear. Anyone of any gender to anyone of any gender can be aggressive, toxic, abusive, they can be stalkery, they can be physically violent, they can be terrible on a first date, they can be any of those things, can go for anyone, any gender, any orientation. It's always, always all across the board. But sometimes I do come up with examples where I have used gendered pronouns for the example that I'm using, okay? Just to be totally clear, no confusion, not saying hashtag all men, not saying that only men do this and only women are victims, okay? Just want to be very clear about that. I had a feeling about my boyfriend being Dom, and early on in the relationship, he said to me, "You know I'm a Dom, right?" The conversation just flowed from there. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you just click and you find the right person, and it's a very natural fit. Like, I've definitely interviewed people and talked to other people in the community before where they were both kinky before they met each other, but they were both really new at kink and hadn't gotten to explore it yet. And then for some reason, they just really clicked together, and then they opened up a whole new world for each other that way. Mm-hmm. I have a platonic thing with a friend, and I'm looking for a mono-romantic partner. My platonic friend's mom said that this counts as poly. Is that correct? I can see what she means, though. Well, I mean, platonic, just like, okay, maybe the definition of platonic is of love or friendship, intimate and affectionate, but not sexual. So, I mean, there are people like monogamy, even like we treat it like monogamy is like a monolith, and like this is what monogamy is. But in reality, monogamy is even something that, though it is sort of the standard and ubiquitous, even in that there are differences. And yes, there are some people where their model of monogamy is like complete emotional, sexual, all of the things are with one person. Your primary emotional contact with the world, your support system, who you go to first, all of that should always be your like monogamous, romantic, sexual partner. And having intimate, close friendships with somebody that's a gender you're attracted to is seen as a threat or something that should be like pushed outside. Like the way that a lot of people will conceptualize this is they will have like a ring basically around themselves, right? You got like different circles of people, right? You've got sort of like your very, very most inner circle, which is like you and the monogamous partner. And then you've got like very close friends and family. And then you've got other family and other friends and like casual acquaintances and coworkers, and then like strangers, right? So you have like people who are like even farther out from there. And a lot of people really think that the most important people in your life should really just basically be your spouse or like your monogamous partner. And having anyone else in your life that can like threaten that position basically is seen as bad and a threat. But I think definitionally, like polyamory means having multiple romantic and or sexual relationships. Like if what I mean, kind of what she's talking about is like more like a QPR, which is like a queer platonic relationship, where you have multiple committed, deep platonic relationships that are not romantic in nature. But I don't think that's necessarily what she means. I think you're perfectly able to have a monogamous relationship where you are romantically monogamous, but you have emotional closeness with other people in your life, and I think that should be good and allowed. And if you have a monogamous person that's very threatened by you having like strong outside friendships, I feel like that's a red flag. Maybe not for everyone, but I think for me that would be a red flag. Yeah, I'm not seeing any messages that have been deleted by mods yet, at least so far based on where I'm at in the chat. I've only seen that sometimes, Nightbot will pop in, and like if you use a bunch of emojis or like emojis and like, I don't know how that, like, I have that setting like very restrictive now. Like, it really shouldn't be flagging anyone unless you have like fucking 5 emojis in a row. But I don't see any messages from some people that have been deleted by mods, so that hopefully shouldn't be a problem at all. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you appreciated the answer. S&M looks more descriptive and formal. For me, S&M seems to separate the roles, while SM seems to blur roles and play. Oh, like, I guess like a sadomasochist or a sadist and a masochist versus like sadomasochism as an act. I guess I could see that. I'm not really sure if people see it that way. I'm mainly a B&D'er myself, but so many expect DS as a part and parcel of that. Yeah, yeah. I think people sometimes forget that just because we're all part of the big acronym, that doesn't mean that like you have to do everything in the acronym, right? Like, you can just do a couple of things or one thing. That's also totally valid. Mm-hmm. That is definitely the beauty of having BDSM as an umbrella term, because I'm still learning about what I'm into before I enter into a potential relationship. Yeah. One of the many advantages of BDSM. Great response. I actually do read a bunch of medical journals. I've started to use Kink, actually. Yeah, I feel like also Kink sounds less intimidating. If you're talking with somebody that you potentially want to date, I feel like if you were to say, I'm kinky, or like I'm into some kinky stuff, or I like some kinky stuff, versus like I do BDSM, I feel like I feel like BDSM is like much more formal to most people and feels much more intimidating, whereas kink is like more like casual. Oh yeah, I just like, I'm into some kinks, I have some kinks, it's like no big deal, it's just casual, it's whatever, it's no big thing. Whereas BDSM is like, oh, that's like a commitment, that's like a big deal. And I use them interchangeably when I talk, because having to say kink or BDSM 50 times in a row is just like, I just can't do it. So it's easier for me to have multiple sort of synonymous words to use. But I feel like kink is probably like a softer way to introduce that concept. You want to date at your current level? That's a power imbalance and it doesn't work. Wait, I don't know. Is that in response to me or something else that I'm missing? I mean, I think it's very, like, as long as you realize that you have a different, like, if we're talking about like level of experience that you have with kink, like, and getting into a relationship based on that, I think as long as you are cognizant of that power imbalance and you're a responsible person and you mean well and you like let the person know that and how that can impact your interactions, I think that you can like mitigate for that appropriately and have it not necessarily be a really huge deal. But I think if we're always expecting to like date at your current level, like, what does it even mean? Because like, do you quantify that based on years or number of relationships or number of scenes done or number of classes taken? Like, what it even means to be experienced in kink is, there's just so many potential facets to that. I think it's hard to like nail down, like, oh, because you've done this many hours of kink based on these things, that means you shouldn't date somebody who's had fewer than this. Like, if that's what we're talking about, I don't think that that really works. That's exactly what she meant. Poly to her means committed relationships with the opposite gender, and I definitely have to tell a partner about my platonic partner. She doesn't get jealous. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't say that that's poly, but I do think you would need to tell somebody that you have like a really close, I'm assuming female friend, that you are very, very emotionally close to, because there are people out there that will be fucking crazy jealous of that, that will be unable to accept that being in your life, and will frankly probably try to turbo that, like a torpedo that relationship, and you don't want to be around that. So that can actually be a way to look for like red flags, honestly. But trying to move my chair here. But I think also, like, you can tell people about it and it doesn't have to be a big deal, right? Like, some people are going to be like, I think it's a green flag if I'm talking to a guy and he has like longer term female friendships. I like that about people. I think it's a good sign. Or just like close, like, but not sexual, not romantic. Honestly, friendships of any kind, really. But it doesn't. I don't really care so much about gender in this. But like, if you can have long-term, close, intimate friends, I think that's a good thing. Not everyone will see it that way, but you want to be with people who are more like me, who will see it as a positive. Yeah, kinky does sound more playful. Yeah. I think that's like I think BDSM is gonna really stick around as a term. I don't really see that going anywhere or like falling by the wayside. I think they both serve their purpose, but I think kinky does sound more accessible for most people and like less serious. Oh, that's really shitty. Oh my god. Uh, by no like five abusers in a row who got coddled by the community. It's a reason I spread the missing stare thing as well as the fade tool and what happened there or Shibari Khan, FetLife's history, which is blah. Yeah, no, all of that is that's really not good. Yeah. Oh, I kind of see it as a failing BDSM and a function of how it was spread in the U.S. through the gay leather culture, very hierarchical, service-oriented, creating expectations. Feel like I feel like I missed something here. Well, I mean, if you've been okay, so the only I'm just gonna go through just to like completely verify this based on what I see. I see one person who self-retracted a message, and I can see if mods delete something. So just like I don't I don't see any deleted messages. If you're using certain language, like if you're talking about, like literally, that's all I see. I see one person with a retracted message. But they deleted themselves. That's it. So that means that that's not Nightbot. That means that that's not a mod. That means that it's probably YouTube itself that's blocking something. And it is if you're using certain language, it could be that. I don't know how much YouTube does that like super aggressively or not, but definitely certain language will flip the YouTube censor. hmm It's usually a green flag, yeah, unless someone is trying to triangulate you to make you jealous. But if they do that, they'll do that with whoever. Yeah. hmm I think it's an emoji thing. Well, if it's an emoji thing, I would see that the message got removed and then like could preview what the message is. But I don't even see the messages at all that supposedly got retracted. I don't see any. I see as far back as I can go in the uh, chat history, which was like I can go back to basically like 5 minutes into the stream starting. I don't see any deleted or removed messages due to moderation activity. So I'm not sure. But maybe I can maybe check it out after the stream and I can double check that. Not that that's very important in this exact minute, but just to make sure people know. hmm Due to the way I hyperfixate, I don't see how people can take such a backseat to learning kink or anything else. I don't fully get it either, but some people are just like they're just like I just want to lay back and be told what to do. They're not very proactive, but I don't know. It's not me. Okay, we're at the part where we're talking about the MAGA people again. Let's see if we got some things in here. Mm. Oh, there we go. It was another time. It was on the last Ace video. Good hydration. I mean, I'm trying my best here. I got like I'm actually not very far into this water bottle, but I'm trying. Um Oh, it was on a, well, if it was on a video, I basically don't moderate those comments. Like, it just, if something got flagged, it was from YouTube. Like, YouTube flagged the comment and removed it. That wasn't me. Any message ending in an emoji gets reduced to just an emoji. I mean, I'm seeing lots of people with emojis in the chat that are not getting removed. So I fucking, who knows with YouTube though, honestly. Okay, wait, let me scroll back here. Let's see if we can find some more questions. Oh my gosh, we're already we got like half an hour left. So get your questions in now if you want to have a hope of me seeing them or answering them. Okay, we're talking about the dating stuff. We're talking about, I have some awkward first coffee and sex store dates. Oh, like going to like a sex toy store is the first date? Like, do you go to coffee first and then go to the sex store? Or like, how does that? I want to know about that. Tell me more. Intriguing combination. Follow-up question. I find it really hot when a dominant is genuinely racist or homophobic. Well, okay. Like, not as a roleplay thing. Okay, okay. I never do anything serious, especially long term with them, but what might be a safe way to explore? I mean, I love the honesty. First of all, thank you for the honesty. Good stuff. I I genuinely I have to really separate out what I would personally do and what I feel comfortable with and like what people as a whole would probably feel comfortable with. Cuz for me, like I wouldn't feel comfortable playing with people like that cuz I wouldn't feel safe. Like I look at somebody, if somebody is genuinely racist or homophobic, they are probably also sexist. They are probably also misogynistic. It's like they almost always come as some layered package deal, even if you don't see the layers on the surface. Like some people are most prominently this thing or that thing, but usually all of those kind of get baked in together at some point, honestly. Like it's very hard for somebody to like just only be homophobic and not also like have some other like sexist or misogynistic or whatever other types of negative beliefs about other group of people besides themselves. So I I wouldn't feel safe exploring that. Um, I feel like maybe the safest way to explore that feeling is like, does it really have to be that they're genuinely that way, or can we get a similar level of satisfaction with the role play? Like, yes, like there are people where like they hate stevia, they hate sweet and low or whatever. They don't want to have sucralose. The only thing they want is pure raw cane sugar, and they will not take anything else besides that. They can always tell when it's different. They don't like it, and like maybe that's you. But like I feel like if you want to make sure you're being safe, I probably wouldn't engage with people that have that set of beliefs because I just find that like I don't know, like maybe I'm painting with a broad brush here, and I don't want to make it seem like oh people who aren't this way can therefore never be a problem. It's only people like this. But I think if you have that belief system and the politics to go alongside that, I would not expect people like that to like be super great at consent practices or like super mindful about their partner's pleasure. Maybe that's stereotyping. I just feel like the politics that go along with that don't really lend themselves to like the kind of empathy and consent focus that I generally like and would want in a person and would feel safe around, you know, honestly, more than anything else. I think definitely don't do anything long term with people like this, but yeah, I think if you want to explore this kind of idea, it's probably safest to do it in like some kind of role play capacity with somebody that you know and trust doesn't actually have these underlying, maybe more harmful or even dangerous beliefs. But yeah, I mean, it seems like sort of what you're doing if you're not doing anything that's super serious. I mean, like sort of the standard stuff, right? Of like play in public, you know, don't go to their house, you know, make sure somebody knows where you're at, have a safe call. Like there are ways you can set up having this be a safer situation. I just like you're definitely playing with fire, and like individual people might be fine, but if somehow you know enough about a person to know that's what their belief system is, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. I'm just like, nah, I'm not confident there's a way to do that in like a safe way. Yeah, those people could also possibly be harmful physically or psychologically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What if they're both role playing? Yeah, I think role play with a good actor was could work. Yeah, like I think that's really it. Like I think if you want this, like just role play is probably good. Like just role play and just suspension of disbelief. like I don't know. Like if you told me like I'm really into people that actually commit crimes. Like I'm like, I don't know. Do you have to though? I don't know why my bangs keep like flipping out, and I don't know if I like that or not. That's rough though. I mean, I have a thing for non-con, so I can kind of understand. It's finding the right balance and avoiding harm. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's definitely a balancing act in terms of you got to make sure that you are. I think some people with their kink, especially when it's like a really like more niche kink. I'm not saying this is you, but like people in general that have sort of more niche kinks that generally have more risk associated with them or like carry a lot of very deep shame, they tend to be more willing to take risk with partners that maybe aren't really that safe as people or like good people to be around and like somebody you can really trust because well, when else are you going to get the opportunity for somebody to let you do XYZ thing to them or also be into this one fetish or whatever. And so that can make it difficult to, if you're just chasing after whatever the particular kink is and kind of saying, sayonara to safety because you're willing to do that to get to the kink stuff you want, like, yeah, you're probably going to run into some potential, anyways, bad scenarios. No one today is completely honest, trying to be honest or completely honest and risk getting canceled. I mean, okay. Who's getting canceled exactly? Like, I just don't think that random people are getting social media canceled and this is some kind of like grave error of humanity that must be solved. Uh, I've been wanting to be in a triangle, oh, like a triad, polyamorous relationship, and I'd be at the center, but there's part of me that thinks it's low key egocentric, and I didn't care how to feel about that. So it sounds like what you're describing is called a V triad, where it's you in the middle and then two people that are dating you but not dating each other. Um, I feel like that's actually a more successful relationship style than like an equilateral triangle where everyone has their own dating relationship with each other just because it's like that's so many failure points. So like you're adding way more failure points to the relationship if that's the way you're doing it where everyone has to have a reciprocal dating thing going on. But is it egotistical to want to be in the center? I mean, not any more egotistical than like thinking primarily about yourself when you're trying to get a partner. Like, is it egotistical when you think about a wedding and you think about what you'd be doing at a wedding? Maybe, but like I think a level of egotism is like fine, and you have to be egotistical to an extent to understand what you really want and what you want to have in your life. So I think as long as you're not like, I think where that could maybe go wrong is if you are, if you're like using other people selfishly to like get your needs met, right? Like if you're just looking for two other people to do that for you, but you're not really calculating in like in real life when you meet people like this, like what their own needs are or what their experiences are or how much time you can spend on them. Like if you're just very selfishly making relationships that only work for you and not for the other people in them, then that's really bad. But just like fantasizing about like what your ideal relationship looks like, I think that's fine. I'm honest and I couldn't care less about being canceled. That's low IQ BS. I I just feel like it's gotten to be such a buzzword. It's gotten to be like it just doesn't mean anything anymore cuz like it's like snowflake or SJW or anti-SJW. Like it's been so overused that now like it just doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just one side like woke. I think it's like woke. Like it's like it used to mean something very specific and now it's just the thing that's happened to people that you don't agree with. Like now it's bad. Yeah, I think it'd only be egotistical if the relationship flowed only one way and your relations were about what you got out of it. Yeah, I mean, like, you have to care about yourself in a relationship. Like, you have to be making sure that your needs are getting met in a relationship too, because that's why you're in a relationship. But if you're only ever thinking about yourself, then that's when it becomes a problem. But I think it's even okay to prioritize yourself too. Like, I think it's like, the only person who's going to prioritize you is likely going to be you. And so if you're not doing it, nobody else is. And so I think it's okay to do that, but it's like it's not like a 99 1% thing or like 100% zero. It's more like a I don't know, somewhere between like 55-45 and like 80-20 maybe. Somewhere in there is probably fine. But yeah, just like the extremes are, I think, where we run into issues. Mm. I love Pussy Riot. I'm pretty sure it was called Make America Great Again. Yeah. Oh, there you go. I included a DeviantArt link. It got deleted. I commented again without the link, but mentioning the name, and the previous deletion got deleted again. So definitely links to anything will get you deleted. If you're just a random commenter, do not put links in a comment because YouTube will just delete it. It doesn't matter what the link is, they will just delete it because it's like the biggest like spam risk are links generally. I commented again without the link, but mentioning the name and the previous deletion got deleted again. That I can't necessarily explain, but yeah, it was the link. It was the link problem. Uh, some just don't know the difference between emo and goth. That's true. When I joined FetLife, everyone is so picky on there and won't play with you unless you have lots of experience. I find dating apps better in meeting girls. Well, that's your problem is you're trying to use FetLife like it's a dating app. FetLife is not a dating app. People are generally not on there to just meet random fucking people to play with. Like even on personal ads, like even on the boards where it's like, here's the Denver area personal board. Like most people on those, like they either are looking for like a gangbang or they want like a dom with 20 years of experience. Like, yeah. FetLife is not in any way representative of like how kinky people interact with each other or like how picky kinky people are generally. But yeah, if you're just like cold calling people on FetLife or like people that say they have a lot of experience, like yeah, like if you're on FetLife and you're only looking on FetLife for people, like you probably have a really high bar to entry because there is so much just disgusting crap you have to deal with on FetLife if you're trying to like find people to date, which I don't recommend. So you make the bar really, really high because you kind of have to because like the bottom rung is like disgusting. It's just like full of people that want to send you dick pics and like they're probably catfishing you and like just like it's terrible. It's just not good at all. Not good at all. So do not use FetLife to try to date people because it will not work. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I know there are people in the community here and like it happens occasionally. I don't think it happens currently though. Most people I know that have met people through FetLife for long-term dating, usually it's either we talked on FetLife, then we met up in person, then we decided to start dating. Like completely starting a relationship online from FetLife doesn't really work. I do know some people that have done that, but that was like, I don't know, 10 years ago at this point, maybe. It's very different. Yeah, the problem is cold calling people on FetLife and not meeting your community or contributing to FetLife groups. Yeah. I mean, but also, like, there's also, like, a native problem with, like, dating apps versus FetLife, right? Like, they're different populations of people. And it's not that, I don't want to blame people on FetLife for being too picky. Because, like, yeah, like, if your fucking kink is getting your mouth sutured and needles, like, you're probably not going to find that on a fucking dating app. And or like full body mummification and like palate wrap suspensions, like that's not really beginner kink shit. And you might not like, you might be okay waiting a long time for the right person to do that with, and not wanting to deal with the headache and the effort and the just terrible time that can so oftentimes result from taking a chance on one of the 10,000 people that are like, hey, baby, I'm a Dom. I don't have any experience yet, but I'd love to tie you up. Like, that is a dime a dozen. And you can distinguish yourself. Like, it's not impossible to find people as a new Dom. But I think what people do is they show up and they go, I'm a Dom. Let me Dom you. Why won't anyone let me Dom them? These people are picky bitches. I hate them. And the problem isn't that they're being picky bitches. It's that you didn't do anything other than the bare fucking minimum. I'm not meaning anyone particular right now, but just the universal you. Like, if you just show up and go, I want to be able to dom people, but then you haven't demonstrated your commitment to doing that in any way, like you haven't taken classes, you haven't read anything, you don't practice, the only thing you've done is jerk off to porn and message women you find hot, like, yeah, you're probably not going to find anyone that way. Whereas when you're on a dating app, most people on dating apps that are intrigued by kink don't know the first fucking thing about BDSM. Like, it's the opposite problem, where there's tons of people that are willing to say in profiles that they conflate liking rough sex and choking and kink and BDSM all together into one big weird cheese ball. And yeah, like, if that's what you're looking for, great. But if what you want is a lifestyle DS relationship, most people that are on dating apps that say they're looking for partners that are open to kink, what they want is to be choked and call somebody daddy and like do deep throating. Like they're not really interested in like a lifestyle BDSM connection 99 times out of 100, or maybe, I don't know, fucking 9 times out of 10. Maybe let's not be so extreme. Like, it's very rare. So, like, yeah, on FetLife, if you're that kinky, you were trying to find partners on FetLife primarily, and you're making a serious post in a personals board or something, like, yeah, you're probably going to have a high bar. Because people are very used to people just showing up and being like, hey, baby, let me be your daddy. And it's like, who the fuck are you? Like, prove to me you actually know anything before I'm willing to engage in this. This Evie rant is why I'm on FetLife and don't use traditional social media or dating apps. Yeah, I mean, like, dating apps, like, I've found people on like Field or OkCupid, but like you have to be willing to be very direct with what you're looking for and have that conversation very quickly and skip over a lot of people that you are not compatible with. And like, yeah, some people, especially if you're a submissive who has a lot of experience, you actually know that most new doms don't want to be with you. That's been my experience. I have been open in the past to being with new partners that were new doms or hadn't explored BDSM yet. And almost every single time, eventually what it boiled down to is they didn't really want to play with me because they were too intimidated by me. I was open to it and they didn't want it. Like, they were like, oh, I actually need a submissive. Like, and they would start dating somebody. It's happened like fucking 3 different times. Like this is so common. Like, either to me or other people I know as well. We're like, they're poly, I'm poly. We start dating, and like, they're kind of kinky, and then they're kind of hesitant to start doing anything with it. And then 6 months later or a year later, whatever, they start dating somebody who's also new and is also brand new to kink and doesn't have any experience, then suddenly they're doing kink every other weekend. And it's because this person was on a similar level of experience as them, and both of them preferred that because the dom was too intimidated by somebody who was too experienced, and the new submissive found everything really enjoyable and fun and easy and didn't have too many goddamn opinions. Like, that's really, honestly, a lot of people are just, like, intimidated by somebody that has too many opinions. Oh my god. I remember one time somebody approached me and wanted me to remove my teeth so that I'd give a better blowjob. Oh my fucking god. I remember this. There was somebody that was on Tumblr that had like a porn website where they had like a really extreme body modification kink where they were doing like all these implants and silicone and lip injections and piercings and like the permanent chastity devices, and they were planning on like removing, they were like, I need to find a dentist to remove my partner's teeth for me because I want to replace them with dentures so that way she can suck my dick better. Like that's actually like really bad for you. I want to quickly explain just in case anyone's like, but that sounds kind of hot though. I know people that have, through no fault of their own, lost a significant number of their adult teeth at a young age. It's really bad for you. It's not a good idea because your jawbone basically starts to like dissolve. Like, it's not good for you to not have any teeth, especially starting at a really young age. Even if you can get it, like your jaw basically like recedes. Like it's not healthy. It's not good for your health long term. Do not remove your teeth for kink, okay? Like Jesus. Like the fact I know where that idea is from just blows my mind. But really, it just shows how all this is really interconnected. I am glad that the passion is appreciated. Thank you. I personally want to gain experience, take classes, and be my local community until I join FetLife. I mean, that's the way to do it. Thank you for saying FetLife isn't a dating site. Always start going to your local events and classes. If people see you around and get to know you and you're learning, they will give you a chance. Yes, that is like you have to get your foot in the door. And you do not get your foot in the door by responding to a random personal board ad or DMing somebody. You get your foot in the door by being there in person, talking, being friendly, communicating, showing that you're learning. And then eventually people like you'll make friends, you'll make connections, people will feel comfortable doing things with you. You might have people approach you. You might have somebody set you up on like a kinky blind date. Like you never know. Like you can make all kinds of connections. You just have to be willing to show up to do that, and it takes typically a little bit more work than just being like, "Hey baby, let me be your daddy." I don't know why I keep going back to daddy today, but it's in my brain. This sounds like something you'd find on the dark web, not a kink website. Oh, this was on fucking Tumblr. Like this was like an open thing. It was a very very popular account. Like literally, they made money. Both of their incomes, I believe, were entirely dependent on live streaming this person that was in bondage like 24/7 every day. Like it was a very extreme kink relationship, and supposedly they both loved it and it was fully consensual and it was amazing and everyone was totally into it. But I really hope that that woman did not have her teeth removed permanently, because that's like you can't undo that. Like you can dissolve lip filler, you can take out piercings, you can take out implants. So like yeah, you're gonna have scars and saggy skin. You can't re-put your fucking teeth back in. That's a one and done scenario. Oh, this was pre-Tumblr. This was like 2014 over Collar Me. Oh, okay. So this is like they took this idea and they ran with it. I mean, I was not in any way young enough to be aware of kink in 2004. So that would be why I didn't know about it then. But definitely, it has maintained a level of relevance in certain circles. There's kink shaming, and then there's just safety. Like, to be clear, my problem with that is not having a fantasy about it or that it would be a hot idea or whatever. Like, you can think that's hot, you can want to role play that, like, whatever, that's your thing. My problem with it is, like, a lot of people just think it's hot and then don't think through the actual implications of it. Like, yeah, fantasize about it, role play it, whatever, do all of that stuff. But just be aware if you actually did that, that would be really bad for you. Yeah, teeth are literally part of your skeleton. Yeah, I don't really, I don't really know a lot about anatomy, but yeah. Amateur dentistry now added to my current limits. Yes. And this is why we do not do opt-out negotiation styles, everyone, because suddenly somebody starts getting out the drill and the flamethrower, and you don't want to deal with that, okay? It's not a good time. FetLife meta tags itself as a dating site. Okay, but like I've read so much about the creation of FetLife. You can literally go to like the history of FetLife and like the about me on FetLife, and they specifically say they designed it to not be a dating website. I'm sure that in terms of like Google Analytics for SEO, they put themselves in the same category as a dating website for advertising purposes because like that's just going to get them more views, but they don't conceptualize themselves as being a dating website, you know, at least from what I understand. That's like the intention from the creators and like how they've programmed it is to not be a dating website. Like, they wanted it to not be anything like that on purpose. Did you see that ashtray that went a little viral, and does it offend you? I don't know anything about any ashtray going viral, and I basically don't get offended by anything, so good luck with that. The only thing I get offended by is people that, I don't know, pretend to know things but then really don't, and then like put people in dangerous scenarios with their own lack of knowledge. That's that's basically it. Or like people that are just like hateful. Like people that are just hateful to groups for no reason. FetLife has sadly gotten pretty sketchy. I'm not on there super a lot, but yeah, it's not the best. Not generally the best. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left here, so get your final questions in, and I will probably be able to get to maybe one or two more questions. Let me see here. Okay. Girl go off. The amount of times dudes slide into my DMs talking about you're my dream goth girlfriend, step on me mommy. But I'm not goth, I'm punk, and more importantly, I'm not interested. I just feel like sometimes they have a humiliation fetish and they know that saying that will get you to react, and that's what they really want. I think a lot of people do it that way. Okay, I suddenly kind of want pizza. Probably shouldn't, though. I have a sandwich in the fridge. It is something I always think about when dating new people because people will frequently think friends are partners. That's wild to me. I believe you that that happens. I just like, friends can just be friends. Like, I've never had a problem with that. Like, I'm happy when people have other friends. I think that's great. I think it's awesome to have connections like that. But. Any advice for talking about kinks with a new partner who is still learning to be vulnerable? So I think the best way to do it is to talk about it in a guided way. So I think it's very difficult for most people to have just like a straight up face to face direct conversation where it's like, what are your kinks? Like, yeah, that's intimidating for most people unless you're like in a kink setting and have practice doing that. I think a better way of doing it is like having the like kind of going steps backwards into like more and more indirect would be like having a conversation over the phone, having a conversation over text message, sharing fantasies with each other, sharing a yes no maybe checklist in person, sharing yes no maybe checklist remotely, talking about your kinks first and then inviting them to be able to talk about it with you and be like, hey, how do you feel about this? And I think that's probably sort of the bulk of what I would advise people to do. I think what I have found works well for people that are kind of nervous or don't necessarily really know things yet is like I don't have something in front of me where I can show you what a yes, no, maybe checklist looks like. But there are lots of examples in books or just like Google search, like yes, no, maybe checklist for BDSM. There's a bunch of different versions of it. There's different levels of like, sometimes they're like 400 items long. Sometimes it's like 20. Like it really depends. You get lots of different options out there. I think going through a list, like each one of you going through a list and then they read one and then you read one and then you fill one out and they would fill one out and then you go together after you've filled each one out and then you talk to each other about like, oh, hey, I'm into this and you're into this too, and then you can have it be more like kind of like a fun open conversation that way. But it depends on how specific you want to get with your kinks too, because that can also be a good way to facilitate being like, oh, hey, I'm really into bondage and so are you. I really like the idea of like rope, handcuffs, full body ties, whatever it is, and then you can get more into particulars that way and then get into it from that angle. But I think leading by example is like generally the best thing to do with partners that are still like learning how to be vulnerable, is to demonstrate that first and then like kind of ask them to do that in return in some smaller way. I think that really helps. Explanations, a YouTube channel has a video on yes, no, maybe checklists. I think, is that a recent one? I feel like I remember seeing that recently. But she definitely does, and I have one, and Midori has one, and yeah, I mean, there's lots of videos on YouTube for yes, no, maybe checklists if you want more ideas. What do you think about a kinky cruise with no kids? Does that exist? I don't know about like a multi-day long cruise. I am pretty sure in Victoria or Vancouver in Canada, and then I maybe like I feel like maybe somewhere else on the east coast of Canada does this. I know that they have like there's daytime kinky cruises they do for like fetish weekend up there, so there are options for that. It is a thing, but I think it's on a yacht. I don't think it's like on like a super party yacht. It's not on like an actual cruise ship. But like swingers cruises are a thing, so I feel like kinky cruises have to be a thing. Yeah, I'm really glad that Dr. Doe is back too. I'm glad that she's back. I know it was difficult for her to be on YouTube for a long time, and like I'm right there with her, same struggles. But I'm glad that she is also back making content. Midori is really awesome. I love Midori. She's good people. I don't know. My like throat is just like really dry today. Ah, I should have worded it better. I meant people need to date within their interests if those interests are a big part of their lives. I didn't mean levels of knowledge. Ah, yeah. Okay, totally. Thank you for clarifying. I think that's generally a good idea. I don't think it has to be an absolute, but I think that's generally advisable. Definitely more into the best practices realm. Okay, I think we maybe have time for like one more question. Yeah, non-con equal CNC. Yeah, I mean like non-con I feel like is more the fan fiction term, and consensual non-consent or CNC is more the BDSM term. I think if you sat down and compared like how they played out side by side, I think there would be some differences in some regard. Like I think non-con features like some different elements to it. Like if you compared an actual CNC scene versus like non-con and fan fiction, there would definitely be differences, but I think they're kind of reflecting the same underlying desire. But there's like I could do a whole video about non-con and CNC. Like I don't know, I feel like non-con. Like I've read erotica before that's been marketed as like non-con, and like when they say non-con, they mean non-con. Like they mean like the person it's happening to does not want it. They don't like it. They don't like it at any point. Like it's not like a CNC in like a constructed BDSM way where it's like, oh, like beforehand we negotiate for this and it's okay and you have these tools and aftercare, and like you do really want it, but we're gonna act like you don't really want it, or you don't want this particular thing, but you want the underlying idea of being forced to do something, and so that's actually what's motivating and rewarding. Like they're related but very different in terms of how they play out. But CNC as a fantasy in BDSM erotica is very different from, it is very similar to non-con in like more vanilla-ish fan fiction. I don't want to call it straight up vanilla, but like honestly, it is by far and away like the most popular fantasy that people have. Like if like it's like multi-partner sex and like CNC and like bondage are like the top three. Like it's not universal, but it's pretty dang close. Is there a best neck restraint to avoid damage? For what purpose? And damage to what? I feel like the best thing is like if you want to avoid potential problems is going to be a well-fitted leather collar that has a quick release. Probably. That's my instinct. But if it's a well-fitted like a fucking like pantyhose is probably the worst, right? Like pantyhose, a necktie, something that can get infinitely tight, right? Like not literally infinitely like a mathematics sense, but like it when you tie a tie, like in order to choke somebody, like you can just keep making that tighter. Like there's no downward limit on that until something breaks. So that's, you don't want to use that. But like a leather collar that's well fitted, you know, it's loose, you've got a quick release on it, and it's not locked, like that's probably the safest. But really, like most, I don't really know of anyone with like a neck injury from a collar or like a neck restraint. I'm sure it's happened, but no stories or anything comes to mind. Unless you're talking about like like collars is one thing, and then people that use like restraints for the purposes of like strangulation or choking or playing around that, that can definitely cause injury. In which case, like, don't use a belt, don't use a towel, don't use a necktie, don't no pantyhose, no fishnets, no stockings. Just stop. Nothing elastic, nothing, like just get something that is meant to go in a neck, okay? And that's what you want to do. Easy peasy. CNC is common because they don't know what real CNC is, and they most likely just mean power imbalance and feeling dominated, not domineering or controlled. I mean, yeah, we could debate that. I mean, I think a lot of people like, and I call it like ravishment play, like people who want someone to like take them by force because they couldn't help themselves because they were so allured by them. Like, sure, yeah, whether you call that true CNC or a power imbalance or like how you want to frame that, I think we could debate that, but I don't think it's necessarily super cut. Okay. I normally don't like pizza because I hate tomatoes, so I make my own pizzas. Today I made one with leftover bratwurst from my Father's Day barbecue. I mean, yeah, if you don't like pizza sauce because you don't like tomatoes, like barbecue sauce, excellent version of pizza right there. Not usually what I get because I love tomatoes, but to each their own. I have like 8 tomato plants in the backyard. So many tomatoes are about to happen. I'm so excited. All right, that was kind of a short one, so I want to do one more maybe? I don't have time to get into this. What is the underlying desire for CNC? I'm just gonna say, just to wrap this up, I guess is like the last question. I am doing a video on kidnapping and break-in play, and that very much talks about the psychology behind a lot of this, and like why people are into it, and understanding the motivations behind it, and also same thing with blackmail kink. So if you want a thorough answer to that, I literally just wrote like 15 pages about it. 14 whole pages, okay, is a lot. maybe, I don't remember how much it was. I think it was 8 for one and then 5 for the other. So I guess that's actually 13. But, or, yeah, 13. Anyways, I think that's going to be it for now. Thank you all so much for being here on this Friday afternoon and evening, or Saturday morning, I guess, for some of you, because it's probably 5 a.m. where you live. But thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate we do these streams every Friday at 6 until 8 o'clock. And I'm going to go skedaddle off to go do some gym time before they close tonight. So I'm going to go do that. Have an amazing evening, an amazing start to your day. Get some sleep, get some hydration, okay? Stay safe, and I will talk to you all